Hello and welcome back to another weekly episode of the Sky Fantasy Football Q&A. We're on to game week 16 now, and once again we do have some questions and dilemmas from Twitter, trying to help out, kind of give my opinions on some of the transfer dilemmas that people are going through. So hopefully if you've clicked on this video, you've also, hopefully you don't have some problems with your teams, but if you do have problems with your team, hopefully this video does help out in some kind of way. We are starting off this week with Streaky, who says, if Dunk is ruled out for a few weeks, do you think moving him to Mbuemo is good? Also, is it time to look at moving on Matty Cash to, say, a Wolves asset if he's out, or another defender like Porro? So thankfully, I don't think you need to make that Dunk transfer. We did get some news today that he is in training. Brighton posted a video of all the players kind of coming in to the training ground, and Dunk was involved in that. So hopefully he should be fit for the weekend, and it wasn't a long-term injury like a few of us were expecting. So things look good for him. Also, Matoma was in this video if you're waiting on some Matoma news. He is also fit. Well, he was also in the training video, so should hopefully be fit for the weekend as well. So Dunk's one of those players that I think you definitely just want to be keeping season long. He is picking up consistent passes. He's one of the most consistent players in the game, and unfortunately hasn't been keeping clean sheets this season, which is why a lot of people are going without him. But the clean sheets are eventually going to come. No team's going to go no games without a clean sheet, especially someone like Brighton, who were so good at it last season. So I do think the rhythm will come. Dunk will start picking up some clean sheets, and he will be a very, very good asset to have. And I think season long, he's just not really worth making a transfer to bring out. So for me, I would definitely be looking to keep him. Cash, on the other hand, another player who was confirmed as training and should be fit for the weekend. So if you've got him, that's good news. If you don't want to transfer him out, I know a lot of people were kind of looking at transferring him out because he isn't performing to the same levels as he was towards the start of the season. So if you did want to bring him out, I do think a Wolves player is the best option. Someone like Cunha, someone like Hwang, or even Neto if he is confirmed fit. But I've done a thread over on my Twitter about the Fulham and Wolves game, so if you are looking for a captaincy or some stats and stuff into the game, I would definitely go and head over there. The link is in the description, and you can go check that thread. We also did speak about it on the Gameweek preview this week as well, so there is plenty of information to go off of. But personally, I think I would probably just keep Cash for now. And if you've got no other players that are injured and no one who's kind of not massively underperforming, I would just skip. I don't think anyone long term is really that worth it outside of someone like Leno, so I think skipping's a good option. But if you are really looking to get someone out, I do think a Wolves player is probably your best option. In terms of Porro, I think I would just leave him alone. I think the Spurs players right now are very, we don't really know what's happening with them. Because there's so many players out, we don't know how they are going to perform. They did just lose against Wolves right at the last minute as well, so I think performance will drop over the next couple of weeks, and I think in terms of bringing Spurs players in, it's probably just a bad idea. Again, we don't really know how their performances are going to go, so I think I would just leave him alone. So I think in terms of Cash, it's either just a keep and see how he gets on, or moving to a Wolves defender could be the best option. Next up is Jack Curbs, who says, I've made 18 transfers this season with 32 left, but have Duncan Bowen in the team. Shall I get them out before the overhaul? So obviously we did just speak about Dunk, so I definitely would be keeping him, especially in your situation with 32 transfers. We kind of want to be holding back as much as possible to the overhaul. In terms of Bowen, the news unfortunately isn't as good. We did get his scan results back, and it doesn't look like he will be fit for the weekend. I think we don't know how long the injury is going to be. Hopefully not too long for people who own him, but I think the way that it's looking, he definitely isn't going to be fit for the weekend. Whether it's obviously, we're just going to have to wait on news to see what to do with him. We do still have a couple of days until the game. If it turns out to be a short-term injury, I probably would just hold in your position again. As I said, you do want to be cutting back in the transfers as much as possible, and Bowen is the third highest scoring midfielder in the game, so up to the overhaul you definitely want to be trying to keep a hold of him, and as a short-term injury you don't want to be like in 2 weeks' time regretting the fact that you took him out. So I think if he misses one game, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if the injury ends up long term, I think someone like Rodri probably is a good replacement. He's only 0.6 million more. I would probably look to move on to him. But again, if you want to take the risk, I think a Wolves player is someone who you could end up going for. But again, 32 transfers, you want to be having players that you're not going to transfer out, so I don't think a Wolves player is as stable as you would want them to be, which is why I think someone like Rodri is probably going to be your best option. But again, you can kind of have a footer around, see what kind of budget you've got, what kind of players you've got, and who you can afford, and then just pick someone who you know you're going to be able to keep to the overhaul, bar an injury. So again, players like Dunk and Rodri, as I was saying, are some of the most consistent players, so trying to go for one of them I think is definitely going to be the best call. The next question comes in from GG Magpie, who says, my team is currently looking like Flag FC with Dunk, Cash and Bowen all doubts. Depending on the severity of the injuries, who to hold and sell and who are the best replacements until the overhaul. Again, it's probably a question that we did just answer. Dunk, Cash, both fine. Bowen, probably the only real doubt. In terms of replacements, I think Rodri is going to be the best shout there. You really just have to look at player, because it's I'm hold until the overhaul. You want a player who's going to be getting consistent points. So look at the players who are scoring the highest points this season. Guys who are getting lots of points week on week on week, consistently, and who you know you can just hold to the overhaul. Make sure you're looking at captaincies as well coming up. Making sure they're all covered as well, and just kind of fill in the gaps from there. But I do think Bowen to Rodri is probably the best move you can make, considering if the injury is a long-term one. Again, Dunk and Cash are fine if Bowen turns out to be a short-term injury. Depending on your transfer account, I probably would just hold him and see how things go. Next up is Ishmael, who says, I have Pope in net and my midfield is Rice, Mbeumo, Saka, Salah and Rodri with 0.1 in the bank and 34 transfers left. Should I skip the Fulham Wolves game? I think this is probably the ideal team that you've got to be able to skip the Fulham Wolves game. I think that midfield is one of the best you can get right now. Salah, Saka, Rodri, staples in every single Sky team. And Mbeumo with good upcoming fixtures, and Rice obviously is one of those guys who just consistently picks up bonus every now and then. I think with Pope in net, he's one of the best goalkeepers you can have right now. He's picking up saves, they're picking up clean sheets. No reason for me, I think, to get rid of Pope. So unless there's a defender or a striker you're willing to get rid of, I think skipping the Fulham Wolves game is going to be perfectly okay. I did explain in the thread on Twitter, I do think it's going to be a low scoring game. But again, with Palhinha out, we did see how many goals that Fulham conceded at the start of the season when Palhinha wasn't there, so we could end up seeing a reiteration of that with Wolves scoring a few goals. But personally, I think with Fulham at home, it's not really going to happen. I think you'd be banking on that. But again, that's kind of what a differential captain is. So I think with 34 transfers left, you want to try keep them back. And for me, I don't think there's any real fires in your team that you have to put out. So I would personally skip. I don't think you need to play that risk, and I would just keep the transfers till later on in the season where more opportunities come up that you can take advantage of those differential captaincies. The next question comes from Colin Johnson FPL, another similar one with best Bowen replacements. Again, it's probably just the ones that we've already spoke about in the video. I do think Mbeumo could be a good one with some good upcoming fixtures, but again, the midfield options right now, there's like loads, so it could be one that he blanks 2 or 3 games and then you're looking at getting him out again. So I think Rodri just is the best option. Nunez I wouldn't look towards right now. Obviously he is playing decently, but Diaz is back, Gakpo's back now, so I think there will be some rotation with him again. I think the chance for Nunez is probably past. We can wait and see what happens with him. He could be an overhaul option if he consistently starts for Liverpool into December. Someone like Eze, I think you probably obviously they do have the captaincy coming up against Brighton in a couple of weeks, but I think for right now you probably are just better going for a Wolves player. I think he is a very similar kind of point scorer to someone like Hwang, so I think with that captaincy against Fulham I probably prefer him. But again, Rodri, definitely looking like one of the better options. And Buemo probably a decent one at the cheaper price point as well. And our final question of the day comes in from FPL Spartans, who says, what have been your most and least successful transfers so far this season? Based on those transfers, do you have any learning points in planning transfers? Hello, so I wanted to say before we go on to the next question, the first minute or so is cut off from the video. I didn't want to go and re-record it because I felt like the clip had a lot of valuable information in there. So the first minute or so is cut off and the face cam's not working. So I don't know what happened, but I didn't want to go and, as I said, re-record it. So the face cam's not working. I'm just kind of like a freeze frame for the next 10 minutes or so. And the first minute, basically just going on about the early transfers, not making early transfers, because there was a lot of players that I originally said I wanted, didn't go for them in the first place, and then ended up transferring them in the first few game weeks. That's basically a roundup of the first minute. The next little bit should be okay, so enjoy. I feel like that's a fairly obvious one. But it's something we've been saying before the season started, not to use transfers. And my reasoning for this being a learning point is because these guys that I've brought in, half of them I was talking about before the season started about how they'll be good picks. The likes of Rodri, Bissouma and Rice, 3 guys that I was talking about very heavily at the start of the season, or before the season started, of how they could end up being good picks in midfield. Ended up opting for Rashford instead of Rodri. Rashford was more expensive. Rashford was just off the back of a good season and obviously has not lived up to that whatsoever at all this season. Rodri, we know, is consistent, so for me I think consistent players is the key to Sky Fantasy. The guys who are at the top of the leaderboards right now are guys that have been good in previous seasons, the likes of Salah, Saka, Haaland, Rodri. We know how good they are, so I think going forward, those guys I wouldn't take out anymore. You'll see game week 3 I took Saka out. I think that was for Diaz. I'm trying to remember the reasoning for it. Obviously it was a good while ago now. I think Diaz had more games and he had a good run, about 5 or 6 fixtures where you could have expected clean sheets. Obviously the clean sheets just hasn't really been there at all in any team this season, so I don't know if I would go back to Diaz, to be honest. I think someone like Walker, a lot more, like 1.1 mil cheaper, looks probably a bit better, but I wouldn't be pumping all my money into defenders. I think someone like Van Dijk right now seems like a popular transfer, but I don't want to put all that money into him when there is the likes of Rodri and Saka and stuff, who I would much rather have. But I think at the time the Diaz transfer didn't go too. It went fair. Like, Diaz did end up picking up a few clean sheets. He was picking up points, but in that time that I didn't have Saka, from game week 3 to game week 12, he'd done very, very well. I think game week 7 to game week 11 or something, he ended up picking up a lot of points. And Saka is probably the main reason why I am such a low rank right now, because I was having good weeks. I was proper going right up the ranks, and then Saka would play, and then my rank would just go right back to what it was at the start of the week. So any rank that I was gaining, Saka would just totally equalise it, and then I would be getting nowhere. So I think for me in both teams, that's the reason why that's the reason why I'm such a low rank. So for me, I think someone like sticking to like proven players and not transferring them out would be a big learning point for me. And it kind of gives you a good idea, like 5 players. For me, I think it's Dunk, Saka, Salah, Haaland, Rodri. 5 players there I think are staples in every Sky team, and I don't think, for me, I would like to transfer them out really, like, for the entire season. I think even when it comes to 3 and 4 for ones, I'll probably just keep them in and look to make moves elsewhere. That way I've got 4 or 5 players around those guys that I can just focus all my transfers on, and I think could be a good move. In terms of like some of the worst moves I've made, the Johnston move was definitely one of the worst ones. I think going from Johnston to Pope wasn't a good move, because Johnson's now like the 3rd highest scoring goalkeeper in the game. And it was a transfer that I used, which I could have saved and used elsewhere. But at the time, it was a good move. I think it was literally 2 days or something before Dean Henderson got injured in the Cup. For weeks, we'd been saying that Henderson was going to end up taking Johnson's place. So maybe it would have been a good move had Henderson not get injured. And for all we know, Henderson could be the number one right now, but it is one of those ones where luck plays a massive factor into it, because how am I supposed to know that Henderson's going to get injured and get a long-term injury, and Johnson's going to stay the number one? So for me, that's definitely one of the worst transfers I've made this season. Another one was getting Bayer in. I'm just going to say Bayer in because Chilwell had to come out anyway. I think getting Bayer in, again, another one, you've got no idea. When I brought him in, he ended up not playing that weekend, and then the injury news came out after the deadline, and then I've got 5 points from him in like the last 5 games or so. So again, like it's one of those ones again that you can't really take anything from it because it is just luck. Again, you are having no idea that Bayer is going to end up injured. So I suppose you could always think like maybe if you want to make a transfer, wait 1 extra week. But then that never always works. You know, you could wait that 1 extra week, and then your guys just scored like 20 points that week, and you've missed out on it just because you wanted to wait an extra week. So again, it's one of those ones where luck plays a massive factor. Another one I didn't really like was loading up on players from the one team. You'll see I've had transfers, taking Colwell out, taking Jackson out, taking Chilwell out. That's 3 transfers on Chelsea players that I had to make, and it was the same in my second team as well. I had the likes of Enzo Fernandez as well as Jackson and Chilwell, and had loads of transfers to make because I loaded up on Chelsea. I did say when everyone was talking about loading up on Spurs players at around game week 11, or what was it, maybe earlier than that, game week 7 maybe, everyone was talking about bringing in loads of Spurs players, having 5 or 6 Spurs players, 2 defenders, having Son and Maddison, having Vicario as well. And then obviously we had the freak result against Chelsea where it's not going to happen all the time, but 2 red cards and loads of long-term injuries coming out. But I think that's why you just don't load up on the one team, because you never know what's going to happen. Plus you're limiting yourself to captaincies. If you put everyone in the one team, you are limited to captaincies on different days that team's not playing. So for me, I think a learning point is definitely like don't put all your eggs in one basket, really. Don't load up all in one team, if that makes sense. I think that would be definitely something that I've learned this season. Another thing I want to speak on is basically trying to get players in early before everyone else brings them in. The likes of Basuma, I got in game week 4. I would have preferred obviously to get him in game week 1 because he got a lot of points in there, but trying to get someone like a player that you think is going to do well over the next few weeks, get them in before he becomes a template player. The likes of like Basuma, like we did speak about him, but no one would have thought about him before he started getting in those points. So you want to get him before he gets the points in. The likes of the Newcastle defenders is probably the best example of this. There's a lot of people who are now sitting at a very, very high rank because they got in Newcastle defenders like Trippier and Schär and stuff. That was something I didn't do. And probably is another reason why my rank is so low right now, is I just didn't touch any of the Newcastle defenders. But if you got in Newcastle defenders before their big run of points, you would be absolutely flying right now. So if there's any hunch or anything you've got, just go for it. Once you see the opening for it, just get it done. I think someone like, I've tried to do it last week with the likes of Anderson and Rodri. Saliba is someone who a lot of people have already got, so I'm just going for a template player in that. Rodri is someone who I think a lot of people still don't have, still looking for a chance to bring him in after his suspension. So you want to get him in early. I brought him in game week 14 and he got 9 points because he scored a goal. So again, someone like an example like that, where you're trying to get a guy in before everyone else starts piling in on it. Anderson could be a similar one. If he picks up 1 or 2 clean sheets over the next 2 weeks, you could end up seeing Anderson as a very template player after that. So I think getting someone in, or getting like your players in early, is definitely another one I would go for. I'm also going to add in the Chelsea players here because I'm just going to like fully add them in because jumping on Chelsea in game week 2 definitely didn't look that good, even though they had, or in hindsight, like again, it's a perfect thing. Again, luck has to really come into those factors. But looking at the best transfers, I don't know if I've actually got any best transfers so far this season. Again, my season hasn't started off as well as I would hoped, but most of my transfers so far have really just been going on to template players, and any of the differential picks I've went for haven't really worked too well. Awoniyi didn't do too well in his 2 single game days. Bayer hasn't done good at all. Everyone else there really is a bit of a template pick. I think Rice was probably one that I got in on early in game week 4, and he done quite well. He scored a couple goals before people started bringing him in. But a lot of the transfers I've made have kind of just been for injuries, for like underperforming players. So I can't really say that I've made like a really like 1,000 IQ move so far this season. Hopefully they're still to come, but that is the learning points I have ended up going for. So hopefully that kind of helps you out a little bit. I was just kind of going off the top of my head basically on some learning points and stuff. It is hard obviously to talk about previous transfers because, as I said, a lot of it is based on luck. But hopefully you've learned something just from that, even if it's one bullet point. But that is going to end off this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.